Welcome back to Congruent Health. And in this episode, we are going to talk about what it looks like to engage in a non-diet nutrition counseling process. All right. So obviously today's a little bit more recovery related from all kinds of disorder eating, whether it's restricting, binging, purging, any compensatory behaviors, exercise, under or over exercise, body image issues, all the things and all the maybe co-current health conditions that might be related to that. But I wanted to give people kind of a snapshot. And again, I'll explain it as I go into what order we do things and kind of what it looks like. But I would certainly say it's a process. And most people do come to us expecting, maybe I'll come for a couple months or a couple sessions. But the reality is, I mean, the length of time in nutrition counseling, I mean, let's say barring any financial constraints or considerations or whatever, let's pretend that's not a thing. Let's just talk about the trajectory. So what I find with nutrition counseling, to help people, again, heal their relationship with food and body image, is that the pace at which people can go really, really depends on the amount of there's nervous system health regulation issues. There is honestly the amount of internal conflict a person might have. So if there's a lot of switching and a lot of ambivalence in a person, and there's no shame in that because we all start where we start, is that some moments parts of us are gun ho, let's go. What needs to happen? What do I need to do? And other moments we're thinking about going back on a diet. So that kind of going back and forth really has a lot to do with the amount of time it's going to take to heal. All right, most people who have some disordered eating also do have some trauma, and there's relational neglect issues in there and attachment ruptures and just the other parts of life, like running a business, having a job, kids, caring for elders. There's a lot of factors. So it's almost like you can put the factors in that would make it take a little longer, like a lot of unprocessed trauma, maybe some instability in your system. And on the other hand, all the supports you have, whether it's time or um, friends, family, spouses that are supportive, um, a super strong um, trust in the Lord. That makes a huge difference. I can't tell you the amount of people that just the journey is longer just because they have some trust issues with the Lord. And I'm not saying like, well, like little doubts here or there, or not 100% trusting him with like one or two topics, but I'm talking like in all areas, just really struggling with, is he really good? And is he really for me? And really trusting to believe anything related to him. I know that's tough for a lot of Christian women to um, acknowledge that because we want to love him and we want to believe him and see for our good, but a lot of people are just kind of afraid. So I just want to put that out there. And I'm going to do a whole episode on, I call them kind of some healing blocker issues that it doesn't mean that people doesn't don't get better. It just means it takes a little longer than we'd prefer. Mostly, because um, what we have to face is really hard. That's just kind of what it boils down to. So I'll just say that at the beginning is people always want to know, well, how long is this going to take? I think one, because, we're Western culture and everything's fast and we want what we want when we want it and we're used to that. It's very, we're we're a microwave culture for sure. And this process, like anything else that's trying to change us from the inside out, from an old version to the one that God wants us to be, it's going to take some time. Um, I can say that I've seen people anywhere between a year and a half, usually at the shortest, to um, many years. And that's just because of some pretty significant severe trauma issues that, some things have to take precedent and we just kind of have some stability with food before we can go forward to the next level. That's really, really common and normal. And I pray all the time that, Lord, you would hasten the process for people because it's hard. It's hard to spend that much time away from other parts of your life, but it's necessary. All right. So I'll just leave it at that for now. But another episode, I will talk about the healing blockers that can extend the amount of time. And again, that's not necessarily anyone's fault. It's just the circumstances sometimes we find ourselves in. All right. So if you were to come to a nutrition counseling session in session one, it would look like a deep and gentle and curious and compassionate inquiry of what your food and body story is. When was the first time food or weight was a thing? Not when you first started hiding food or sneaking food or restricting food, but when did you know? Like, when did your bubble get burst? Or when did your innocence get like, oh, I gotta think about that. I gotta worry about that. Because that age is very important to the timeline of like where we started to like have to be in survival mode instead of just thriving and growing. Okay, so we will find ourselves in certain kinds of thinking patterns and behavior styles with our food that mirror the times when things kind of got off God's plan. Okay. And he will definitely restore that. It's beautiful to see people catch up really, 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 really quickly developmentally. They could be clear up into their 60s and still like have some stuff that's like more related to like what a child might want, because that's when some of the ruptures around food and body image happened. And so that big God's so good and gracious to like catch people up in a matter of weeks. It's amazing. So we're going to talk about the food and body story. And in that there's going to be some pauses and reflections, and but a lot of it's just like telling the story of the ups and downs of food, and when things were less hard and when they were more hard, and what we did and the weight and what we did to try to get that to happen and why and all that. Current health status, anything we're doing with food or health or weight or exercise or whatever. And then we talk about the legit, like the nitty gritty of the food themselves. And that's a hard part of that process for people because our brains project that if somebody else sees our food, they're going to judge it and shame us. And obviously, that's the last thing that's going to happen in a nutrition counseling session to heal. But it's understandable why we feel that way. So I'm saying we as like I was that person too. I remember. So I'm speaking to it as if basically we've all been in this together. Okay. But it's a deep and wide about our histories, what's going on with the food currently, and then doing some education about like why things that we did with food and body never really worked. And we need to know the why so that we have an anchor as to like if we have some truth about why it didn't work, then we have some decision points to make. Are we going to continue to do things that don't work? Okay. And some things like that. We'll talk about the effects of semi-starvation on your body, mind, will, emotions, basically your functioning in life and why those things happen and how we can heal that. And then we make a decision together as a team, of like, well, what's you know, depending on what a person's goals is at the beginning, where's a good starting place, right? So is it starting with some very gentle meal planning, maybe very complex meal planning, whether it's just adding more food items, maybe it's adjusting food and eating times. Um, Sometimes as we're going right into intuitive eating because someone's like ready for that, their body isn't in too much like malnutrition distress. Um, and we need the container of the hunger fullness, and we can at least have a starting place to start to feel that. And the goal here is that like you're not supposed to know how to do it right. If you haven't been eating from hunger and fullness in decades, I don't expect you to know how to do it, competently for a good while. So every week is a practice, different things we're looking for in terms of awareness and mindsets and thinking, and also how the nervous system is responding to what, thoughts you have and what you're doing with your food. We talk about if it's appropriate to food journal, and if we're going to food journal, how we're going to do it to see it as a tool of compassionate inquiry and not of judgment and shame and hiding and lying and all that kind of stuff. Um, we might be discussing if meal support, like one-on-one or with other people is going to be the most helpful. There's all kinds of goals that we can, or interventions we can do to based on what people want to work on. Some of the typical things, maybe somebody has a different goal set at the beginning around movement or around health things, and they want to get some education on how do I manage fill in the blank health condition without dieting? How do I do it? Um, and talking about people's options. It's very important to have informed consent. Our whole world is around lying and half-truths and trickery and manipulation. So it's really important that we take the time to look through, like, here's what the best thing that we have is that doesn't do any harm. Here's how it can look long term without being perfect about it and still make progress with your health goals. So those are all things that maybe talked about or not that first session. Of course, movement. So we had to look at our beliefs about movement, values around movement, um, what kind of movement is connected with your values, what motivations are really about power seeking, dissociation, denial, false sense of identity, that kind of stuff, and we'll do that for all the things through food and health and all that as well. Other things that people do in nutrition counseling include like basically health media literacy. We want you to know how to see things online or read articles and be able to do a little more deeper digging yourself to find out if they cherry picked information and just scooched it out there to you to lead you to the ad to the next page to get you to buy something, right? Um, that's just super important. We know that most marketing is meant to elicit an emotional response to get you to act, aka read or buy or do. And we want you to know how it works. We want you to see how, like, pretty much everything that we are um, encouraged to consume has a lot to do with problems that are manufactured that we really don't have. And then the very same companies that create these problems, um, then they turn around and sell you a solution for the problem that they created. AKA, you have the wrong body. Here's the pill, the program, the thing to fix said wrong body that you don't really have. We want to teach you how to see those things. It's really, really important that we learn how to think and see and see in full view what's actually in front of us and what's happening. Okay. And we want you to be your own nutrition expert. I don't want nutrition to be complicated for people whatsoever. I want it to be a very, very, very small part of your life. Um, we've got to learn how to be a compassionate witness. Again, most people have parts. Part of you is moving on with life and wanting to have a good relationship with food. Otherwise, you wouldn't be watching or listening to this podcast. Um, you want that. And then the parts you don't want to let it go or afraid to let it go or afraid of what other people are going to think or afraid of who they're going to be without it. And so we have to become a witness to the function of that stuff so that you can get healing. Okay. Of course, because so much of my education is on the physiology, how the body works under stress. We're going to talk about the nervous system a lot. I want you to understand what it means to be in fight, flight, freeze, or please. Why does that happen? How does it impact your eating, your digestion, um, your immune system health, your cognition, all that? Because if you don't know how to do that, you're going to be like probably buying and doing things that aren't going to fix the root cause of why your body's in balance in the first place, why you have chronic low energy, why you don't feel like moving, why you're always hungry, but you feel like you're doing the hunger fullness stuff right. We've got to look at, like, how come your body is staying in this either constant threat or vacillating too much, and hyper and hypoarousal? Where's that coming from? What part of you is holding that? When you get triggered and it messes with your appetite, what just happened? We have to learn how to understand that and provide your body with some here and now safety so that you can get deeper and some healing can happen. Of course, we talk a lot about body image. You all can imagine that. Where the beliefs come from. Um, there's a difference between health um, and what your body looks like, and just being really firm in that. Um, yeah, where these beliefs come from, where's your value and your worth come from? Noticing that like your body image vacillates if depending on how dysregulated you are. You might have parts of you that think your body just looks fine, and other parts of you that think that like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's who I am. That's some dissociation within your body image that needs to be dealt with as well. And then, of course, all the health topics, right? Like hormones and metabolic health and aging and how we feed families. And um, I'm not going to go into all the minutiae of different kinds of ways that, you're eating, you're sleeping, you're moving, um, how you think about your food and body impact your health and different health behaviors. That's all really individual, but it's stuff that we talk about. Um, And we also talk about like the things that are missing. Like so many of us, if you've been culture long enough, we've lost the art of planning for nourishment and joy and a non-hurried, flustered eating experience because we're moving so fast and doing so much and so much of this healing process is coming home to be able to like having meal times and sitting and being grateful and connecting is a part of the food experience, not just enjoying the food and the food being nourishing, but getting back some of the art of um, planning to be nourished. I don't use the word meal planning like in make your whole every single meal for a week on a Sunday in 3 hours. You could do that if you enjoy it. Sometimes, occasionally I do that, but also being flexible with that and um, um, learning to not see your needs as a burden or your family's needs as a burden. They're not. We're fortunate to be able right now in this time to be able to plan and cook and shop and make meal times enjoyable so that we do absorb the best of what we feed our bodies. And it does our not only our bodies but our souls a lot of good. And lastly, what else? Yeah, attachment. That's so important because I can tell usually within a couple sessions, maybe even one session occasionally, but usually a couple, like how you are parented, because it shows up in how you care about yourself with food, how you you see your needs, how you respond when your needs aren't met, how you respond to that in other areas of your life. And I see it in the food as well. So I usually know how people are parented, and that there's some reparenting that needs to happen as well around food and needs. And if those issues aren't addressed, we end up living with these intolerable conflicts around our food and our bodies. That's just not necessary. It's all based in beliefs that our younger selves have about us getting our needs met. And, I know this can be more global than just food, but food is care, food is nourishment. Um, and if you haven't had a lot in care and nourishment and safety and these different kinds of needs met for care and attunement, it's going to show up in your food. So it's really important to know how all that works. So I hope I gave you all just a little bit of a snapshot of what sessions look like. Other things too, we do cook and shop in sessions with clients, meal plan. Some of the things that seems like they're very, very important. They're just one piece, I guess, of the um, non-diet nutrition counseling pie that we might do. But, there's probably other things that I can't think of. Of course, we talked about movement earlier. I think we got most of it covered, though. Um, the basics from the body perspective and how, yeah, there's some soul stuff here that interacts with that as well and how they work together that are all addressed. And the goal of all of this is there to be wholeness in your relationship with food and weight and movement and health, how you see yourself, how you take care of yourself, um, how things are in their congruent, proper place, not too much, not too little. And yeah, your discernment just continues to grow and grow. So I hope this episode enlightened you, gave you some information, encouraged you to help you see how deep things can go as well. It's not just like, like, okay, she's going to tell me what to eat. We literally never do that. I wouldn't say literally never, but very rarely. When someone asks us how to eat, we're usually asking what is feeling like it doesn't know how to find that out inside, what's happening inside. And usually a person isn't in their here and now self. Here's what I want to eat. Help me learn how to execute that. It's usually some younger part that's feeling like they're overburdened and overwhelmed and needs that to be taken care of for them. Not the adult self has to do that. Um, but sometimes we have to help ourselves catch up. So thank you all so much for watching and listening. And God willing, I'll see you in another episode. Bye for now.